Hello, and welcome to another episode of my Type 35 build. And things, they are a-changin'. The hood's been taken off because I needed access to both sides of the scuttle since the tools have turned to getting the firewall fabricated and installed. It's going to be a 5, maybe 6-piece aluminum assembly that's part structural and part not structural. The aluminum fabrication all got started with the rear bulkhead, which is hiding behind the upper seat back, but allows access to the rear suspension. Then came the belly pan. That got bolted to the bottom of the 3 lower chassis cross members, and it extends forward under the car towards the engine, stopping right at the transmission bell housing, which is where the lower firewall section ties in. Actually, the best place to start on the firewall is from the interior side. Come take a look. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So, the belly pan extends forward towards the lower firewall, and where they meet, I join them together with a Toeboard bracket. Originally, there would have been a 1 1/4 inch round steel tube here that have supported the clutch and brake pedals, but because my ride height is so much lower, I started with a piece of 1/4 inch thick aluminum that I trimmed pretty artfully, especially around the bottom of the transmission case, which will provide clearance for movement in the drivetrain. Then I went to work adding speed holes to get the bracket to its current feathery weight. The whole thing bolts into place, so future modifications and maintenance will be easier. And you can also see on the driver's side the holes where the brake and clutch pedal assembly will attach to the bracket. The 4 small open holes drilled through the floor side are where the base of the pedal assembly bolts through, sandwiching the belly pan, Toeboard bracket, and pedal assembly together. Then the 6 small holes through the firewall side I added to sandwich the Toeboard bracket between the pedal assembly and the master cylinders for a little more strength. The other 3 bigger holes on the firewall side are the pass-throughs for the clutch and dual master brake cylinders. Putting them in the engine compartment kind of retains the same floor-mounted, up against the firewall aesthetic of an original Type 35 pedal assembly. On the passenger side of the bracket, it has 6 holes of its own, not for anything to pass through, but, weight savings. You can also see how the bracket was trimmed to follow the contour of the transmission on this side as well. The holes got placed a little more symmetrically than the driver's side since the passenger, or anyone looking into the car, say like this, is going to have a clearer view of them, so a little more form to match the function. Which, I forgot to mention, the driver's side, the lightning holes are asymmetrical because the left 2 had to fit between the pedal assembly mounting holes. Moving to the engine compartment side of the firewall though, it bolts to the Toeboard bracket pretty cleanly and extends over the frame rails. Being 1/8 inch thick like the floor pan, this is the structural section of the firewall. You can also see how the lower firewall was trimmed for the master cylinders. I relieved the area below them, so should I desire to modify the lower firewall, I could pull it out without having to disassemble the brake and clutch assemblies. The lower firewall panel then extends out over the top of the frame rail, where it'll bolt to a pair of bulkhead support brackets that are kind of the icing on the cake for the firewall. I made them out of 1/4 inch thick aluminum plate and then welded them together to emulate the original Type 35 bulkhead brackets, which back in the day would have been cast aluminum, but they serve the exact same purpose. They connect the frame, the firewall, and the body all together where the passenger's compartment extends physically into the engine compartment. While the flange on the inside perimeter is what the firewall would get bolted to, I welded them up with an extra lip around the outer perimeter, A detail that the original Type 35 bulkhead brackets had as well, to break the sight line so the edge where the brackets and the firewall meet wouldn't be as noticeable. I think once everything comes together, it'll be a neat little touch that'll make the car look better, even if nobody really notices it. Something you really may not ever notice, though, is how much of an angle the brackets are at compared to one another. They look straight at a casual glance, but if you look at them overhead, you can see they had to angle in to follow the frame, which makes the corners all compound angles, so the flanges in the interior and where the brackets meet the firewall would be straight relative to those planes. One of those, well, yeah, kind of things when you hear it, but it's not something anyone's been quick to notice. What you can see, though, is the gap between the bulkhead bracket and the body. It's still leaning to the driver's side from sitting unsupported for so long. The gap's about half what it was before the passenger side bracket got installed and nudged the scud a little more upright, but the body still needs some massaging. Which reminds me, having to adjust things, the reason the firewall's made out of multiple pieces is the same reason an original Type 35 firewall was. Two bulkhead brackets join everything together, a thicker lower firewall section for floor support, and two light upper sections. So when the need arises, you can pull the upper firewall and have immediate access to the brake and clutch mechanisms right through the top of the firewall. That's going to make clutch adjustments and brake tuning a breeze. A whole lot easier than having to contort yourself down through the footwell and hope you adjusted the turnbuckle in the right direction. And yep, that's all I got. Back to turning wrenches.